Sir, you need to wait your turn like everyone else. Nurse Serena Hale didn't even look up from her computer screen when she dismissed the black man, clutching his chest in the emergency room lobby. We'll call you when we're ready. Dr. Darius Voss tried to speak, but the crushing weight on his sternum made words impossible. At 45 years old, Chief of Cardiology at Mercy Heights Medical Center, pioneer of 3 revolutionary cardiac procedures, and right now dying in the ER of his own hospital, while staff assumed he was faking symptoms for faster service. Have you ever been so underestimated that it almost cost you your life? The fluorescent lights of Mercy Heights emergency room buzzed with their usual sterile indifference. Dr. Darius Voss pushed through the automatic doors, one hand pressed against his chest, where his heart felt like it was being crushed in a vice. The other hand gripped his car keys. The BMW, parked haphazardly outside, still had its engine running. Next. Serena Hale's voice cut through the crowded waiting room. She was months into her ER nursing job. Young, efficient, and tonight, about to make the worst assumption of her career. Darius approached the desk. Sweat poured down his face despite the aggressive air conditioning. I'm having chest pain, severe, radiating down my left arm. Difficulty breathing. Classic heart attack symptoms. Any first-year medical student would recognize them. Serena glanced up briefly, her eyes scanning Darius's casual attire. Jeans, a simple button-down shirt, no jewelry except a modest watch. What she didn't see was the Patek Philippe timepiece that cost more than her annual salary. What she didn't see was the man who had performed over 2,000 successful cardiac surgeries. What she saw was a black man in casual clothes claiming to have chest pain on a busy Friday night. Uh-huh. Her tone dripped with skepticism. Have you been using any substances tonight, sir? Darius's medical training kicked in even through the pain. The question wasn't about his health history. It was an accusation. No, I need immediate... Sir, everyone here needs immediate attention. Serena cut him off, returning her gaze to her computer screen. Fill out these forms and have a seat. We'll call you when a doctor is available. She slid a clipboard across the counter without making eye contact. But what she didn't know was that the doctor was already here. The waiting room was packed. A crying child with a broken arm. An elderly woman with breathing difficulties. A teenager who'd cut his hand on glass. All of them were white. All of them had arrived after Darius. All of them would be seen before him. Darius's chest pain intensified. The medical part of his brain cataloged the symptoms with terrifying precision. Acute substernal chest pressure, 9 out of 10 on the pain scale, cold sweats, nausea. Classic STEMI presentation. He had maybe minutes before irreversible cardiac damage, maybe less. He stumbled toward a plastic chair, each breath feeling like shards of glass in his lungs. His phone buzzed in his pocket, probably his surgical team wondering where he was for tomorrow's morning rounds. Darius had spent the evening reviewing case files in his car, too absorbed in a complicated valve replacement to notice the warning signs his own body was sending. Now those warning signs were screaming. "Nurse!" an older white woman shouted from across the room. "My husband needs oxygen. Can't you see he's struggling?" Serena immediately grabbed an oxygen tank and rushed over. The man was breathing, conscious, talking, clearly stable compared to Darius's deteriorating condition, but Darius was invisible. Minutes passed. The elderly man with breathing issues was wheeled into a treatment room. The child with the broken arm followed. The teenager with the cut hand went third. Darius's vision started to blur at the edges. The crushing sensation in his chest had evolved into a burning pain that radiated down both arms, now a sign his heart attack was progressing from acute to critical. "Sir, you still haven't filled out your paperwork?" Serena appeared beside him, clipboard in hand, her voice carrying that particular brand of irritation reserved for difficult patients. Darius managed to scrawl his name with shaking hands. Dr. Darius Voss under occupation. His cramping fingers wrote "Cardi" before the pain forced him to stop. Serena snatched the incomplete form. "I need all the information before we can see you." "Please?" Darius gasped. "Cardiac event. I need—" "Look, everyone thinks they're having a heart attack." Serena's voice dropped to a whisper, sharp with judgment. "Half the people who come in here claiming chest pain just want pain medication. We have protocols that were about to kill their chief of cardiology." A young resident named Dr. Marcus Thompson emerged from the treatment area. "Did that black guy in the lobby ever get triaged? I saw him on the security camera. He's been sitting there almost an hour." Serena waved dismissively. "He's fine. Probably just once diluted. You know how it is." Dr. Thompson frowned. Something about the man's posture bothered him. The way he was completely still, head tilted back, breathing shallow. Those weren't the movements of someone seeking drugs. Those were the movements of someone dying. But what happened next would change everything. Darius's phone rang. Loud, persistent. The ringtone was Beethoven's Ninth. His surgical team knew that if they heard that music from his phone, they were to answer immediately because it meant he was in surgery and couldn't pick up himself. The phone tumbled from Darius's slack fingers, clattering on the linoleum floor. The screen lit up. Dr. Rachel Cohen, surgical team leader. Dr. Thompson's eyes went wide. He recognized that name. Dr. Rachel Cohen was Chief of Cardiology's right hand, the lead surgeon on Darius Voss's revolutionary team. Why would she be calling some random ER patient? Thompson grabbed the phone. "Hello? Isaiah, where the hell are you?" Rachel's voice was sharp with worry. "You missed the board meeting. Your car is still in the parking lot with the engine running. Security is freaking out." Thompson's blood ran cold. "This is Dr. Thompson in the ER. Whose phone is this?" "It's Dr. Carter's phone. Why do you have—" Rachel stopped mid-sentence. The implications crashed over her like a wave. Is Darius in the ER as a patient? "There's a black male patient here who's been waiting for—" "Get him to a cardiac unit now." Rachel's scream could be heard across the waiting room. "That's Dr. Darius Voss. He's our chief of cardiology. If he's presenting in the ER, he's having a heart attack." The phone slipped from Thompson's hand. Serena Hale's face went from dismissive to ashen in seconds flat. The man they'd been ignoring for nearly an hour was their boss's boss. The man whose research she'd studied in nursing school. The man whose face hung in the medical pioneer's portrait gallery on the 3rd floor. The man who controlled every hiring and firing decision in the cardiology department. The transformation in the ER was instantaneous and horrifying. "Code STEMI! Code STEMI!" Dr. Thompson screamed, grabbing a crash cart. "Get me a gurney. IV access. EKG. Someone call the cath lab." Serena stood frozen, her brain unable to process what was happening. The man she'd dismissed as a drug seeker, the man she'd made wait while he was dying, was Dr. Darius Voss. A team of 6 medical professionals descended on Darius like a coordinated military operation. 2 nurses established IV access. A 3rd attached EKG leads. Dr. Thompson pulled up Darius's medical records on a tablet, his hands shaking so badly he could barely type. "BP 88/52, someone called out. "That's hypotensive." "ST elevation in leads 2, 3, and a VF. Another voice. "Inferior wall MI, acute." "He's been having a heart attack for at least minutes." Dr. Thompson's voice cracked with horror and guilt. "Get him to the cath lab now." The gurney crashed through the double doors. Overhead lights blurred past. Voices shouted medical jargon that Darius understood perfectly, even through his deteriorating consciousness. He was dying, and everyone suddenly cared. But why did they only care once they knew who he was? The cardiac catheterization lab was state-of-the-art because Darius had designed it himself years ago. He'd insisted on the best equipment money could buy. Equipment that was now going to save his life. Dr. Rachel Cohen burst through the doors in her scrubs, having sprinted from the administrative building. Her face was a mask of controlled terror. Darius was more than her boss. He was her mentor, her friend. The reason she'd become a cardiac surgeon. "Talk to me," she demanded, scrubbing in with practiced efficiency. Inferior wall STEMI, delayed presentation, estimated minutes since onset. The interventional cardiologist, Dr. James Wu, was already guiding the catheter through Darius's femoral artery. LAD is 95% occluded. We need to place a stent immediately, or he's not going to make it. Rachel's hands clenched. The left anterior descending artery, the widowmaker, the single most dangerous vessel to have a blockage in. Darius had operated on hundreds of these. He'd saved countless lives from this exact scenario. Now he was on the table, unable to save himself. "Darius," Rachel leaned close to his ear. "Stay with me. You're going to be fine. We've got you." Through the haze of pain and medication, Darius managed 3 words. Document everything. Protocol. Even dying, he was thinking about the bigger picture. But what he saw during those minutes on the table would fuel a revolution. The stent placement took minutes. Darius's heart rhythm stabilized. The chest pain began to ease as blood flow returned to the damaged cardiac muscle. Dr. Wu worked with the precision of a watchmaker, guided by the same techniques Darius had pioneered. "Stent deployed successfully," Wu announced, his voice carrying relief. "Flow is restored. He's going to make it." The collective exhale in the cath lab was audible, but as the immediate crisis passed, a different kind of reckoning began. Rachel Cohen pulled off her gloves and walked directly to where Serena Hale stood outside the lab, her face streaked with tears, still in shock from what had almost happened. "Minutes," Rachel said quietly, her voice carrying more menace than any scream. "You let him sit there for minutes with the STEMI. Do you understand what you almost did?" Serena couldn't speak, couldn't move, could only shake. "You made assumptions about a patient based on his appearance, based on his race." Rachel's words were surgical strikes. Those assumptions almost killed the best cardiac surgeon in the state. Those assumptions did kill other people who came through this ER and received the same treatment, because Darius wasn't the first. He was just the first who survived to tell the story. Recovery room. Darius woke to the steady beep of cardiac monitors and the uncomfortable familiarity of being a patient in his own hospital. An IV dripped fluids into his arm. EKG leads dotted his chest, the same equipment he'd ordered for this very unit. Rachel sat in the chair beside his bed, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. She'd been crying earlier. Now she was just angry. "How much damage?" Darius's voice was hoarse from the intubation. "Less than it could have been, maybe 15% of the inferior wall. You'll recover fully with cardiac rehab." Rachel leaned forward. "Darius, we need to talk about what happened. I know exactly what happened." Darius's eyes were clear, focused, and we're going to fix it. He reached for his phone on the bedside table. Despite Rachel's protests, he opened his email and began composing a message to all Mercy Heights medical staff. From Dr. Darius Voss, Chief of Cardiology, subject, mandatory emergency meeting, 8 a.m. But the email he wrote would do more than just call a meeting. The message detailed everything. His minute weight, the assumptions made about his condition, the dismissive treatment the potential outcome if his identity hadn't been discovered. He included statistics about healthcare disparities, data on implicit bias in emergency medicine, and research on how Black patients experiencing cardiac events were significantly more likely to face treatment delays than white patients with identical symptoms. Then he added, "I survived tonight because of luck and timing, but in this hospital, in ERs across this country, Black patients are dying because medical professionals make the same assumptions that were made about me." This ends now. Tomorrow morning, we begin the Voss Protocol for equity-based emergency care, a complete restructuring of how we triage, treat, and care for every patient who walks through our doors. If you believe healthcare is a right, not a privilege, be there at 8 a.m. If you believe skin color should never determine the quality of care, be there at 8 a.m. If you want to be part of the solution instead of the problem, be there at 8 a.m. This is not optional. This is the future of medicine. He hit send. By the time the sun rose, the email had been forwarded to every major hospital in the state. By mid-morning, it was on social media. By afternoon, it was national news. The revolution had begun. The Mercy Heights Auditorium was designed to hold people. This morning, over were crammed inside, with another watching via live stream from overflow rooms. Dr. Darius Voss walked to the podium without assistance, against his cardiologist's advice, with a fresh stent in his coronary artery and a determination that transcended physical pain. The room fell silent. Last night at approximately 8:47 p.m., I walked into our emergency room having an acute myocardial infarction. His voice was steady, amplified through the sound system. At 9:32 p.m., 45 minutes later, I finally received treatment. Not because our ER was overcrowded, not because we lacked resources, but because the staff looked at me and saw a Black man in casual clothes who they assumed was drug-seeking. The silence grew heavier. In those 45 minutes, 3 white patients with less acute symptoms were seen, treated, and discharged. In those 45 minutes, approximately 15% of my cardiac muscle died. In those 45 minutes, I came within minutes of permanent disability or death. He clicked to the first slide. Security camera footage from the ER. Time-stamped, showing Darius's arrival and subsequent wait. This footage has been submitted to the State Medical Board, the Joint Commission, and federal health oversight agencies. What it shows is not an isolated incident. It's a pattern. Next slide. Statistics showing treatment delays for Black patients versus white patients in Mercy Heights ER over the past years. The disparity was staggering. Black patients with chest pain, average wait time 34 minutes. White patients with chest pain, average wait time 12 minutes. These numbers represent deaths that could have been prevented. Heart attacks that progressed from treatable to catastrophic. Strokes that resulted in permanent disability. All because of implicit bias in our triage system. A hand shot up from the audience. A senior ER physician. Dr. Voss, with respect, these are complex medical decisions. How do we differentiate between genuine emergencies and people trying to scam us? Darius finished the question. Is that what you were going to say? The physician fell silent because that was exactly the assumption that almost killed him. The assumption that a Black person claiming to have chest pain is probably lying. The assumption that's built into our medical training, our triage protocols, our institutional culture. But what Darius proposed next would change everything. Effective immediately, Mercy Heights Medical Center is implementing the Voss Protocol for equity-based emergency care. These aren't suggestions. These are mandatory requirements. He advanced to the next slide. Point 1. All patients presenting with potentially life-threatening symptoms, chest pain, difficulty breathing, severe bleeding, loss of consciousness, receive immediate assessment regardless of appearance, insurance status, or perceived credibility. No exceptions. Point 2. Triage decisions are documented with specific medical criteria. Patient seems to be drug-seeking is not a medical criterion. Vital signs, symptom duration, and clinical presentation are. Point 3. Every ER shift will be monitored by independent observers from our new Office of Healthcare Equity. Treatment times, triage decisions, and patient outcomes will be tracked by race, ethnicity, and socioeconomic indicators. Point 4. Any staff member found to have made treatment decisions based on racial bias will face immediate suspension and mandatory retraining. Second offenses result in termination. Point 5. This data will be published quarterly and made available to the public. Transparency is not optional. The room erupted. Some applauded. Others looked stricken. A few looked angry. Dr. Serena Morrison, Chief of Emergency Medicine, stood. Dr. Voss, with respect, these protocols will require significant resources. Then we find the resources. Darius's tone left no room for negotiation. My near-death experience last night is now a $50 million lawsuit waiting to happen. I'm waiving my right to sue on one condition. This hospital becomes the national model for equity-based emergency care. He paused for effect. The money you would have spent defending that lawsuit? That's your budget for the Voss Protocol. The insurance premiums that will drop when we eliminate bias-based malpractice? That's your ROI. The lives we'll save? That's your moral imperative. The room couldn't argue with that math. 3 months later, the changes at Mercy Heights were measurable and profound. ER wait times for Black patients had dropped from 34 minutes to 14 minutes, below the white patient average. Patient satisfaction scores had increased across all demographics, and most importantly, cardiac event survival rates had improved by 23%. But the impact extended far beyond one hospital. The Voss Protocol had been adopted by dozens of hospitals across multiple states. Medical schools were incorporating implicit bias training based on Darius's experience. The case had become required reading in emergency medicine residencies nationwide. Dr. Darius Voss stood in the newly dedicated Office of Healthcare Equity, watching as his team of analysts reviewed the latest data. Former ER nurse Serena Hale now worked here, not as punishment, but as penance. She'd chosen herself. She'd completed advanced training in healthcare equity, and now spent her days identifying bias in medical systems. Dr. Voss, Serena approached with a tablet. I need you to see this. The screen showed an email from a hospital in rural Georgia. Last week we treated a Black farmer who came in with chest pain. Old protocols would have made him wait 30 minutes. Thanks to the Voss Protocol, he was in the cath lab in 8 minutes. The doctor said if we'd waited, he wouldn't have made it. You saved his life. You saved him from what almost happened to you. Darius read the email twice. This was the such message they'd received. 127 lives saved because one person nearly died and refused to let it be meaningless. The real work is just beginning, he said quietly. Healthcare equity isn't a protocol, Serena replied. It's a culture change that will take generations. But we're starting it now, because of you. Because sometimes survival isn't enough. Sometimes you have to transform the system that failed you. 1 year later, Dr. Darius Voss addressed the American Medical Association's annual conference. His speech, The Patient You Don't See, Implicit Bias in Emergency Medicine, received a prolonged standing ovation. The Voss Protocol was now implemented in hundreds of hospitals nationwide. Healthcare disparities in cardiac event treatment had decreased significantly in hospitals using the system. Patient mortality rates from delayed treatment had dropped overall. But more importantly, medical students across the country were learning a different approach to patient care. one where assumptions based on appearance were replaced with evidence-based assessment. Darius's heart had fully recovered. The 15% damage to his cardiac muscle had healed with minimal permanent impact. He was back in the operating room performing the surgeries he loved, training the next generation of cardiac surgeons. But now, before every surgery, he did something new. He looked at each patient, regardless of race, class, or background, and reminded himself, this could have been me. This could be anyone. Every life matters equally. The stories we tell ourselves about strangers, the assumptions we make based on appearance, the systems we build that reflect our biases. These touching stories remind us that real-life accounts often reveal the most profound truths. Stories that expose the inequities in our healthcare system. Stories that change not just individual outcomes, but entire institutions. Dr. Darius Voss's experience isn't unique. It's a pattern that repeats in emergency rooms across America every single day. Black patients facing cardiac events wait longer, receive less aggressive treatment, and die at higher rates than white patients with identical symptoms. But change is possible. The Voss Protocol proves it. Have you witnessed healthcare disparities? Share your story in the comments. Know someone in healthcare? Tag them. This message saves lives. Subscribe to our channel for more real-life accounts of quiet strength, systematic change, and the power of refusing to accept injustice. Because sometimes the most powerful response to being underestimated is to transform the entire system that underestimated you. Your voice matters. Your experience matters. Together, we change the narrative. Hit subscribe, share the story, save a life,